I personally know women who haven't seen their husbands in over a year. I know children, little kids who haven't seen their dads or their moms for over a year because they've been rotting in a DC prison.
Wait, what?
My next guest is the founder of the Walkaway movement, made quite a journey from former liberal to founder of this movement to a political activist. And he was in Washington, D.C. on the day of the Stop the Steal rally, what the Republicans are referring to as an insurrection. He was arrested and charged on felony charge of interfering with the police during civil disorder, illegal entry, and disorderly conduct on restricted Capitol grounds. I'll let him take it from there. Please welcome back to the program the founder of Walkaway, Brandon Straka. Brandon, how are you?
How are you?
I'm doing well, Brandon. I hope that you can hear me okay. I hear you fine, and you look great. Brandon, tell us exactly what you were doing on that day, January 6th. What was your intention? I know you spoke at the rally. Tell us exactly why you were there and what you hope to accomplish.
Yeah, so I was actually a scheduled speaker at a permitted event at the Capitol on January 6th, and so as I always understood the plan to be, President Trump was speaking at the Ellipse, and then the entire attendance there was going to march to the Capitol, and there would be another program at the Capitol where dozens of people, about 3 dozen people or so, were scheduled to speak, and I was one of them.
And as I was approaching the Capitol to speak, I started getting messages on my phone that were telling me that people were going inside the building, or that they were hearing that people were going inside the building. I didn't know exactly what that meant, so I continued forward on the grounds and started shooting a video. And I proceeded on to the east side of the building, and now this is a distinction that I keep trying to make when I do my interviews, because the most of the footage that people have seen of people smashing windows and scaling walls was on the west side of the building. So those of us who were on the north, south, and east sides had no idea that anything like that was happening. And as I was entering the grounds, there were no police officers present. The sidewalks were completely open. There were thousands of people there. And I proceeded toward the steps and saw a man at the top of the steps with his hat in his hand, sort of motioning down to the people below and saying, "They've opened the doors. They're letting us in. They're letting us in." At that point, I walked up the stairs and I held my camera above my head and pointed it down toward the 2 large double open doors. And I filmed for about 8 minutes. I never went inside the building. I didn't engage in any violence, vandalism, theft, or destruction. After about 8 minutes, a man came out of the Capitol and got on a bullhorn and said, they've cleared Congress, everybody clear out. And at that moment, I turned around and I left. And I kind of thought that was the end of it. I uploaded the video that I just shot on Twitter about an hour later. And then when I started to see on the news the full breadth of what had happened that day, the destruction and the violence and things that had taken place on the west side, it became clear to me that I didn't have the full understanding of what had taken place. So I took my video down. And I kind of thought that was the end of it. And then 2.5 weeks later, an FBI SWAT team came into my apartment, put me in handcuffs, and took me to jail for the charges that you just mentioned.
So, Brandon, you didn't do anything violent. You didn't throw anything, toss anything, hit anybody,
No.
Nothing.
No, and I was never accused of that. I mean, even when they came and got me and took me to jail, I spent several days in jail. And then when I finally had the opportunity to go in front of a judge, it sort of felt like being in the Twilight Zone, because the prosecutor in the courtroom said, we know Mr. Strzok didn't go inside the building. We know Mr. Strzok didn't engage in any violence or vandalism or theft or destruction. So we're comfortable with the court authorizing Mr. Strzok's release and not detaining him pending his charges. And I thought to myself, well, if you know all of this, why did you have a SWAT team come into my house at the crack of dawn and take me away in handcuffs and present me with a search warrant from which they stripped my apartment of my computer, my phone, my iPad, my hard drives, my thumb drives, my clothing. It was pretty aggressive.
Brandon, we're going to take a break. I want to hear about the charges. I want to hear about why you pled guilty to something that apparently you didn't even do. I also am I mispronouncing your name? I've been calling you Straka. You've been saying Strzok. Do I not pronounce the A?
Yeah, there's a silent A at the end of my name. It's fine. Everybody says it right. It doesn't bother me.
Okay, so Brandon Straka is my guest, founder of the Walkaway Movement. We're going to talk about the charges. We're going to talk about what your lawyer advised you to do. We're going to talk about whether they tried to get you to say there was some sort of organized insurrection sparked by you-know-who at the very top. All of that and more, 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. My guest website is walkawaycampaign.com. He is Brandon Straka. Brandon, you were in Washington, D.C. for the Stop the Steal rally because you thought what exactly would happen?
Well, I think the understanding was that there was going to be some sort of reveal in the sense that I know that people wanted like a 10-day reprieve for a forensic audit of the vote. So rather than people moving ahead with the certification as things were, because there were literally tens of millions of people in the country who thought that something was wrong with the election, who thought that there was at least some level of fraud, which may or may not have swayed the election one way or another, but people were deeply concerned about this and the integrity of the election. And so it had been suggested that Mike Pence might actually, rather than moving forward with certification, call for a 10-day reprieve to call for a forensic audit of the vote. And I think that that's what people wanted. I don't know anybody who thought that, there was going to be a demand to reinstate Trump. Everyone just wanted to feel like their vote actually mattered.
Mm-hmm. Did you hear Trump speak? Did you hear him say, I want you to peacefully go and make your voices heard? Did you hear him say that?
Yeah, it was pretty clear. I mean, and again, that was always the plan. I was right there front and center when Trump was speaking. I was one of the last people to leave the ellipse. He very, very clearly said, peacefully and patriotically march a symbol at the Capitol. He even said that he was going to join us, which seemed like a really cool surprise. So everything seemed perfectly normal to me.
How were you treated after you were arrested? You said you were arrested in your apartment. What time of the day was that? Exactly what happened? What did they say to you? What did they do to you?
Well, it was early morning. They got me out of bed. I woke up to the sound of pounding at my door, and I ran to I knew it was the FBI by the way that they were pounding on the door. I mean, it was very aggressive, and the feeling that I had at the moment was that if I didn't get to the door really quickly, they were going to break it down. And so I went and opened the door. Sure enough, the FBI was there. There were a team of about 8 or 9 agents. They told me that I was facing multiple felony charges. Within about 3 minutes, or 30 seconds, I was turned around and handcuffed, and they presented me with a search warrant. They took me to jail. I spent several days in jail. And I have to say, I don't feel that I was mistreated by the FBI. I know I've heard horror stories about people who had the FBI raid their home and turn over drawers and break things and leave the house in complete shambles. That was not my experience, thank goodness. But it was incredibly jarring and aggressive to be taken to jail in handcuffs when I didn't even go inside the building. So, I mean, I was really, really flummoxed and confused about why they would pick me up in the first place.
Did you have a lawyer already? Did you get one when you were in jail?
I did not have a lawyer at the time that I was taken to jail. And that was actually part of the really scary thing is, I went there, I was processed in, they took my mugshot, I was put in an orange jumpsuit, I was given a prisoner ID number, and I was allowed to make a phone call. And at that point, I called one of my employees and tried to explain the situation as quickly and effectively as I could. And the last thing that she said to me before the guards came to get me to take me to my cell was she just said, please try not to worry. We're not going to stop fighting until we get you out of there. And she assured me that they would find me an attorney. And at that point, I just had to sit there for several days waiting for my opportunity to see a judge. And when I did finally see a judge, that's when I met my attorney. And then when I got out of jail, I got to meet my attorney in person.
Had you made any statement before you got an attorney? Did they try to get you to make some sort of statement before you hired an attorney?
Yes. When the agents came to my house, they asked me to sit down and answer questions with them. And I told them at that time that I would not answer any questions without an attorney. And their response to me was, okay, so you're unwilling to cooperate. And I said, no, I'm absolutely willing to cooperate with you in any way that I can. but I cannot answer any questions without an attorney. And that at that point, they took me to jail.
By the way, that was very wise on your part. Lord knows what they would have done with that, with any statement you made. I'm sure your lawyer told you that was a wise move on your part not to have said anything until you retained counsel. My guest is Brandon Straka. He was arrested for his role in the so-called insurrection. When I come back, Brandon, I want to talk to you about this term insurrection. I want to talk to you about why you pled guilty to something that you said you didn't do. And I want to ask you if you saw the Project Veritas tape with the New York Times reporter on it admitting that January 6th was no big deal. He chastised his own New York Times reporters for blowing it all up, said it was fun, and it's the same guy who wrote a series of articles about the so-called insurrection.
So over the top. It was like me and two other colleagues who were there, who were outside. And we were just having fun. Dude, come on. Like, you were not in any danger.
Matthew Rosenberg is a Pulitzer Prize-winning national security correspondent for the New York Times. In multiple meetings with one of our undercover journalists, Rosenberg reveals a lot about the inner workings and inner turmoil at the Times. For starters, he doesn't hesitate to undermine his own paper's coverage of the events that took place in our nation's capital on January 6, 2021, and chides corporate media's reaction, or in his own words, overreaction.
My guest is Brandon Straka. Brandon, let's back up just a second. Your apartment, you said, was searched. What was the basis on which they obtained the warrant?
So the video that I posted on Twitter, I posted this video which lived on Twitter for about 1 hour, and I took the video down, but Twitter trolls had already copied the video by then. And so they had sent the video to the FBI, and the FBI, based off of that video that I just described, where I spent the 8 minutes on the Capitol steps, actually went to a judge and asked for an emergency order to have me arrested. So there was never any evidence that went before a grand jury, and a grand jury never decided to indict me, and I wasn't brought up on charges from a grand jury. Instead, this was based off of the video that I posted on Twitter. Twitter trolls sent to the FBI. The FBI went to a judge and said, we need to arrest this guy immediately, and the judge granted them a search warrant and a warrant to arrest me.
So, Brandon, you don't post that video, we're not having this conversation.
Correct. That's probably true.
So your lawyer advised you to do what? I'm sure you said, I'm innocent of the charges, I haven't done anything disorderly, and your lawyer said in response to that what?
Well, I think as you can see how a lot of these Capitol riot cases are being handled, there is no mercy, there's no leniency, and there certainly is no such thing as anybody in the DOJ or the FBI saying, you know what, maybe we made a mistake, maybe we overcharged, maybe we accused somebody of saying something or doing something that they didn't say or they didn't do. When they came and got me on this complaint, the same day, they put out an 8-page press release to the media. And in this press release, they said, Mr. Straka did this, Mr. Straka did this, Mr. Straka did this, he said this, he said this, he thought this, he knew this. I mean, they had a complete and total breakdown of my mental state, my motivation, what I said, what I did, why I said it, why I did it. So once that's out in the public and it's been published by CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and it is gone international, they're not going to walk any of that back. And I have to say that I think that a lot of people who are going to trial on their January 6th charges, I wish nothing but luck to anybody who does that. I mean, if these are guilty people, then I wish them reasonable justice. And if they're innocent people, then I wish for them nothing but success with their trials. But the truth is, I don't believe that any January 6th person is going to get a fair trial in front of a DC judge or a DC jury. And in my case, it felt that the best decision that I could possibly make was to take the plea agreement that I was offered, in which the DOJ dropped the felony charges against me, but proceeded forward with a misdemeanor charge of disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. Now, along with that plea agreement, I had to basically take ownership of a lot of things that I wish I didn't have to take ownership of, but I didn't get to write my own plea agreement.
Yeah, in your plea agreement, you made a lot of assertions, admissions that you claim that you didn't do. As you know, I heard you speak about what I thought was the unjust way you were being treated, and I even contributed to your legal defense fund. How much did you have to spend for your lawyer?
At this point, I'm at probably about $150,000 that I've spent between that misdemeanor case. And then there's also this other case that I hope the conservative media starts paying more attention to, because it really reveals so much of the corruption and dishonesty of January 6th. So in the month of September, a law firm, a nonprofit law firm in Washington, D.C., that I think if any reporter did a tiny bit of investigating, they'd probably find out that this is a heavily funded by the Democrat Party nonprofit law firm, decided to file a civil suit against about 36 people, including myself. They're suing Donald Trump, Roger Stone, and like I said, dozens of other people. And they're accusing us of all sorts of outlandish and interesting things. Now, these are 8 Capitol police officers that are being represented in this case. As far as I know, these 8 Capitol police officers were only working exclusively on the west side of the building. I was on the east side of the building. I've never met these officers. I've never seen these officers. They've never met me, and they've never seen me. But in the civil case against me, they allege that I violently breached barricades to enter the Capitol grounds and then proceeded to physically assault police officers, including the plaintiffs, who I've never met in my entire life. So I'm in about $50,000 on the civil suit, and we haven't even gotten to the motion to dismiss yet.
Brandon, just about 20 seconds left in this segment right now. Did they try to get you to admit that this was an organized insurrection led by Donald Trump?
Well, what I've been asked numerous questions for which I would say that is the basis of the narrative that they are trying to create. The bottom line seems to be that they're trying to tie a thread back to Trump on every storyline connected with this day, from the organizations that were there that they're claiming were seditious conspirators, to individuals, to the fact that violence ever broke out in the first place. Everything they're trying to tie back to Donald Trump, which in my opinion is preposterous.
Okay, Brandon, please don't go away. I want to talk to you about the Project Veritas video with the New York Times reporter who was there saying it was no big deal. It was just fun. Last few minutes with Brandon Straka of the Walkaway movement. He was arrested in connection with the activities on January 6th, pled guilty to disorderly conduct. Brandon, according to CNN, you've admitted to recording yourself telling the mob to, quote, go, 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 telling rioters who were taking a shield away from a U.S. police officer, take it, that you were, quote, deeply sorry and ashamed for being present at an event that sent members of Congress running in fear of a building, and, quote, no police officer should ever have to feel for their life or safety or in jeopardy because they're working at a protest, close quote. These are the things that, according to CNN, you admitted to. Your reaction?
Well, okay, so certainly I am sorry for being at an event that sent members of Congress running from the building. I mean, I do think that January 6th was a disaster of an event, and I regret my presence there. I wish that day hadn't happened at all. That is absolutely true. In regards to the first two things that you said, those are things that are listed in my plea deal. I signed the plea deal, so for all intents and purposes, I have confessed to doing those two things. I guess all I can say is that nobody should ever put their hands on a police officer. I have always felt that way. I felt that way on January 6th. I felt that way before, and I still feel that way. And nobody should have ever shouted, take the shield, or take it, or encouraged anyone to take a shield from an officer. That kind of behavior is completely inconsistent with who I am and anything I would ever say or do.
Have you seen the Project Veritas undercover tape with the New York Times reporter who was there admitting that January 6th was fun, that the left is making too much out of it, chastising his own reporters for being wimps, essentially, that nobody's life was in danger? Have you seen that, and what's your reaction to it?
I have seen that, and it made me really sick when I saw it, because we've got to the media has always been nasty. The media has always been divisive. That's just something we kind of know and we can count on. But I think it's really next level when we've gotten to this point where they are being this disingenuous about something that's tearing people's lives apart. I mean, this isn't just about hatred of a political opponent or, wishing to do harm to somebody who supports Donald Trump. I personally know women who haven't seen their husbands in over a year. I know children, little kids who haven't seen their dads or their moms for over a year because they've been rotting in a DC prison awaiting to trial or to move forward with a plea deal. Some of them on non-violent charges. People's lives have been irreparably destroyed because of what the way the government has handled January 6th. And I think that for the media to continue to drive this and be flippant and treat it as if it's a joke is really gut-churning and disgusting.
Brandon, you've been kind. You called it disingenuous. This guy was there. He'd been writing the contrary. He's been writing about how outrageous it was, calling it an insurrection. Now he's admitting it's not. He was lying. Brandon, Thank you so much for coming on. God bless.
Thank you, Larry.